Okay, so I don't know if you saw my message that I sent out just this morning, that I was so sad to find out after Rosh Hashanah that our friend Jen Jacobson passed away on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So her funeral is tomorrow, and at noon I think it's at noon at the Hebrew Educational Alliance. So, excuse me. She attended our class for many years, and she also participated from Florida during the pandemic while she was getting treatment there. So she was a very, very brave person. And just every time I spoke to her, she would tell me what was going on with her treatments, but then was always, what's happening with your family and wanting to hear about the kids and the grandkids. So just able to maintain such a positive attitude is really incredible. So I posted to her daughter's Facebook page last night that we were going to do our class today in her memory. So whatever we learn from today and however it impacts us, that the credit goes to us, but it should also be an aliyah for Jan's neshama. And someone said, I know people are thinking like, oh, on Rosh Hashanah, and being inscribed in the book of life, and then you pass away on Rosh Hashanah, what does that mean? But as we've spoken about, the book of life is not meaning that you are alive physically. It means that you have attached yourself to that which has eternal life. And that is so she was and is inscribed in the book of life, of living her life, being connected to things of eternal meaning and eternal value. And that's the real book of life. So yes, we want to be alive physically, but it's much more important to be alive in every other sense of the word. And that's what we are hoping for. All right, let's start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Welcome everybody. Happy 5782. I hope your Rosh Hashanah was meaningful, inspiring, however your places did it. I know just with COVID that everything was is challenging. The weather here in Colorado was beautiful as far as weather. So for all the different synagogues that had services outside, I think everybody had a really nice experience being outside. Thank God, it was really beautiful. So 5782, we had 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. We sang over and over again, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. We're connecting with Hashem as our parent and as our ruler, and the davening changed to God's kingship and God's rulership, and that we want to be part of God's kingdom. So that is all true, and we're focusing on that. But now I want to focus on the part where we identified ourselves with God as being our Father. So if God is my Father and God is your Father, guess what that makes us? That makes us siblings. Because if we have the same parent, that means we're siblings. And it's not just like, oh, we're all God's children. It means we are siblings. So we are siblings. And now we're going to talk about this from the perspective of, yes, all of humanity are God's children. That is true. But we're going to talk about our inner circle of family, of our first degree relatives. The rules have been in Israel that people can go if they have a first degree relative who is a citizen of Israel. And it doesn't matter how good of a friend you have. It could be you're the person's godparent. Sorry, you have to be a blood relative that you can prove with birth certificates. And that's how it's been. So we're talking about that kind of connection. This is in the Jewish people. It says, our Father, our Father, our Father. That means look to the person next to you in the next square. She's your sister. So we are sisters, we are siblings. And there's nothing that makes a parent more happy than to have his or her children getting along. And there is nothing that brings more grief to a parent than having their children not only not getting along, but doing harm to each other. So today we come after this, our Father, our Father, our Father, we come to today, which is a fast day. Today is the fast of Goodalia. And after all of this celebrating, today we have a sad day. So people sometimes joke and say, and people say this, and I also heard this, what we're going to learn today comes from a wonderful video that was from Aleph Beta. So I don't know if those of you who subscribe to Aleph Beta have already seen this video. Patricia, I don't know if you had seen this one on Goodalia. Okay, good. That's great. You can see it afterwards and fill in some more of the gaps. So people joke and say, well, after 2 days of eating all the food we've had for Rosh Hashanah, it's good to have a fast day because we need to kind of not be eating today. So that's then ha ha ha. But that's not really what this is about. It is about the fact that Goodalia, who was the appointed governor of Israel, appointed by the Babylonians after the destruction of the first temple, was murdered by a fellow Jew. And not only was he murdered by a fellow Jew, he was murdered and everybody in his court was wiped out. And that triggered the complete leaving of the Jewish people from the land of Israel for a period of time after continuous presence since the time of Joshua until the time of Goodalia. Everybody else who was left then fled to Egypt or was wiped out. And that was the end. So this is one of the fasts that is connected to the destruction. And you would think like, well, we already had, did we just do Tisha B'Av? That was just like in August, we did Tisha B'Av about the destruction, and we already talked about that. Said, yes, that's true. But now the Goodalia story, which I don't know, growing up, did you ever even hear of Goodalia? It's like, who's Goodalia? We don't fast for and so his Yortzeit, he was actually killed on Rosh Hashanah. He was killed on Rosh Hashanah at a Rosh Hashanah meal, if you can even believe it, of how horrible that is. So think of your family gathering for Rosh Hashanah. And at the end of the meal, there's a bloodbath of killing of one brother to the rest of the siblings. How's that looking to God? It's like, you just had Rosh Hashanah and you're killing each other literally on Rosh Hashanah. I have nothing to say to you people. I have nothing to say to you. So we're like, did this just like wipe out everything? What did we do? What are we doing? So we want to talk about who Goodalia was, what the story was, who the person was who killed him, and is this a theme that just keeps cropping up for us? We do not have a fast day on the day of the murder of Rabbi Akiva. Everyone knows Rabbi Akiva. We don't have a fast day for the murder of anybody else. Why are we having a fast day for the killing of Goodalia? Like, okay, so it was a Jew who killed a Jew. That's really sad. But unless there's something deeper going on and there's a pattern that we need to be aware of today in our own lives in 2021, that we are somehow still responsible for because we ourselves are doing it. So I want to also just take a moment to say that Dale Marcus has joined us, and I was just going to say, I have a question. Your Shabbat Shuvah sign behind me, correct or backwards? It's showing up exactly right. This Shabbat is called Shabbat Shuvah. It's the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so this time of Shuvah, of Teshuvah, the time of return, is what we're going to talk about from the perspective with Goodalia is going to be our focus. But before I say that, because Dale, I just want to say to give our condolences to you on the loss of your dear husband. And we're glad that you are back with us, and his neshama should have an aliyah, and you should be comforted. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Ellyn. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And when I announced in our class after he had passed away, I said, for those of you who aren't quite sure who Dale is, she's the one who always has the beautiful, appropriate sign behind, behind her for our class. So we're very sorry for your loss. Okay, so who was Goodalia? So Goodalia, first, what's the scenario? The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. In that destruction, it says most of the Jews were killed or exiled to Babylonia, including Jeremiah the prophet, who was taken in chains to Babylonia. There was a tiny, tiny little remnant of Jewish people who were allowed to stay in the land of Israel, which was horrible and great at the same time. At least it wasn't totally empty. There were some Jews who were left. The strangest thing happens in Babylonia. The person who is in charge of the military is called the head butcher. Now you think like, okay, that kind of works. If you're in charge of the military being a butcher, that's kind of like what the Babylonians did, which was to butcher people. So he, for some reason, decides to let Jeremiah go back to the land of Israel. And not only that, but the king of Babylonia decides that he's going to appoint a leader of the Jewish people, not just like this remnant of people there just trying to eke out a living, but to have governance. Now that's really strange. You just spent all of this effort trying to completely destroy the Jewish people, burn the temple to the ground, kill most of the people, exile, and you leave a little remnant, and then you're going to let the prophet go back, and then you're going to appoint Goodalia as the governor, and you are now going to have the seed of basically a return. It's like, this is really exciting. The Jewish people over the centuries have done really, really well in situations where we're left with a remnant. Think about after the Holocaust. People went down, take like a little tiny something, and we will recreate. So as long as there's something we can start with, then there is hope. He says this was a time of incredible hope. Goodalia organized the people, instituted a government, and created some. And then when Jeremiah comes back, then the people, of course, are then much more strong. And not only that, but the people who had left, who had fled, came back from the different places where they had fled and came back to Israel. This was a time of like, okay, we may have had the destruction, but things are on the up and up. We're heading in the right direction. And Goodalia was in charge of all of this. So between Goodalia and Jeremiah and the people coming back, it's like, okay, this is not the end. We have hope springs eternal in the Jewish people. This is great. Until someone who worked for Goodalia, his name was Yochanan ben Kareach, and he had been a captain of the Jewish army that had fought against the Babylonians. He comes to warn Goodalia that there is a person named Ishmael, not our Ishmael, but that's going to play a story. It actually is a Jewish name, and there are future Rabbi Ishmael even in the Talmud. That was not this person, but that a man named Ishmael, who is being sent by the king of Ammon to assassinate Goodalia. And Goodalia doesn't believe it, because there's no way that a Jew is going to be working for a foreign government is going to come and assassinate me. And he's like, I'm not listening to that. He wouldn't listen. The same person, Yochanan, comes to warn Goodalia again in secret and says to him, like, I know you're trying to present publicly that we have unity amongst the Jewish people and things are on the up and up, but let me go and kill Ishmael first before he kills you, because if you get killed, then basically the whole thing's going to be over and everything's going to be lost. And Goodalia, even in secret, even undercover, not in public, because the first warning had been in public. The second warning was in private. It's like, okay, Goodalia, like your PR, like we're all together. No brother would ever do this against another brother. That's fine for the spin for the public. That's fine when you're having the press conference. But now I'm coming into private to tell you, like, let me take care of this. Nobody will ever know. I'll take care of it. I'll take the responsibility. And Goodalia's like, no, I don't believe it. And he would not let him take care of it. So fast forward to Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, I guess Erev Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah had actually started, this man, Ishmael, comes with 10 people. And he comes, and Goodalia is thrilled. And he comes to his Rosh Hashanah dinner. And they have a feast, and everybody of Goodalia's people are all gathered together. And at the feast, Ishmael and his men rise up and literally stab Goodalia, kill him, kill everybody in the room, kill everybody. And that's the end. And what happens the next morning when people wake up, because everyone was killed, word had not gone out that it had happened. So at this point, nobody knows that Goodalia has been killed. So this would then be on basically the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So then after that, some refugees come who are coming to mourn the destruction of the temple. It says 80 people came into Jerusalem and they're mourning the destruction of the temple. They came from Shechem, so remember that. They came from Shiloh and from the Shomron, from Samaria. And what happens? They are crying and mourning the destruction of the temple. And it says this Ishmael, the assassin, he comes out and he's crying and he's doing it. He goes, oh, this is so terrible. Yes, you know what? Let's go see Goodalia. Let's go see Goodalia, and he'll tell us what to do, what we should be doing, what you should do. He'll comfort you. It ends up being a trap, and they take these 80 refugees into the area where Goodalia had been, and they murder those 80 people also, and they throw them into a pit and to cover up the evidence. And with that, it says, then the remaining Jews, there was complete chaos. The Babylonian government goes crazy. It's like the Jews, can't trust them. Nothing's going to happen. They come after them. It's a complete destruction. And the remaining Jews flee back to Egypt. And at that point, there are no Jews left in the land of Israel. So this is very tragic, and you wouldn't want to see this movie. This would have to be rated, I'm not sure what, because it's so horrific. So we have all these things that happen. The question is, what is going on, and does this remind us of anything else? So as is Rabbi David Foreman and his staff's approach, their question is always, where have we seen this before? So we're going to have just even a list of words. And it's like, where have we seen this before? Where have we seen 10 men breaking bread with somebody, or 10 men breaking bread and eating before they do something dastardly? Where do we see somebody being thrown into a pit? Where do we see that there is a slaughter or a pretend slaughter? Where do we see possibly fake tears, the fake tears of Ishmael? And where do we see a chief butcher? Now, one or more of these words might ring a bell. Where have we seen this before? What story is this pointing to, Riva? We'll see if we can. I'll probably be able to read your lips. It's like.
So the story of Yosef has a lot of that.
Story, exactly. And Lois, you said it too, the story of Yosef. And this is the story of brothers against brother, being willing to go so far as to kill him, intending to kill, throwing into a pit and being done with them. And what is at the root of that? What is the story with the brothers? Why do they do that to Joseph? What's really behind that is jealousy, okay? They are jealous because Jacob loves Joseph more, so they think. Not just they love Joseph, that Jacob loves Joseph in a different way. They're convinced that Joseph is a threat to them, and so they want to do him in. So let's track the story, and we'll fill in the gaps, and then we'll see why this would be a fast day. Why this is saying like, oh no, not again. We're doing this again. So we have Ishmael with the 10 people with them. It says that's how many brothers there were who sold Joseph. It was the 10 brothers. Benjamin, of course, as the full brother of Joseph, was not involved in the sale of Joseph. And of course, Joseph wasn't involved in the sale of Joseph. So that leaves 10 brothers. 10 brothers, the 10 people who were with Ishmael to killing Goodalia. It says in the Torah that the brothers, Joseph's brothers, ate bread. They sat down and ate before they threw him into the pit. The same thing, they threw him into a pit. The same thing that the refugees were thrown into a pit. And interestingly, we all think of the Joseph story and we think about Joseph being in prison. And when he was in prison, the dreams that he interpreted were for the wine steward and the chief butler and the baker. But there was another person. There was the person who was the savior of Joseph, who takes him in and he works for, and who is, and I didn't remember that because we always focus on the other. So if you look in the text, thank you, Beth Ann. Did you see the video from Rabbi Foreman? Yishmael is the rejected brother. Okay, so hold Beth Ann's thought. That's exactly right. But before we get to that. Let's go to when Joseph is sold. Who do the brothers say? On page 205 in Genesis, Parsha Vayeshev, which is chapter 37, they say to Judah says in verse 26, Judah says to his brothers, what gain will there be if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Okay, they want to sell him to the Ishmaelites. Why do they pick the Ishmaelites out of everybody? It's like the Ishmael was the first rejected brother, or so he felt rejected, because God told Abraham that the covenant is going through Isaac, not through Ishmael. Ishmael would be great, but not that covenant, not that covenant. So Ishmael is the name of the rejected brother. He is the rejected brother, and there's something that's going to be from our Ishmael the assassin, who also feels rejected. Okay, so they want to sell him to, like, let's sell Joseph, the brother we reject, to the people who are the descendants of the rejected brother. The reject goes to the reject. So otherwise you could say this was like, why not just sell him to the first person who comes along? Why do you have to say, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites? What does that have to do with anything? If you're trying to get rid of somebody, so get rid of him. But there's a hint there. It's telling us how the brothers felt. We brothers feel rejected, but we're rejecting Joseph, and we're going to sell him to the rejected ones. We're going to sell him to the Ishmaelites, because like those rejects should all go together, because we're the ones who should have been chosen. We go to our assassin, Ishmael. Who is he? It says he is actually of royal descent. He is from the family of King David. And so how does he feel that Goodalia, who's also of royal descent, but Ishmael was not appointed as governor, Goodalia was. So how does he see Goodalia? How is he ends up working for a foreign agent and is willing to kill a brother, literally in the same family? It's like, he's jealous. I should have been made the governor, but Goodalia was. And he's willing to ruin the entire Jewish people for his own jealousy. It continues on. When Joseph is sold into Egypt, who is it who takes him in? So we know it is Potiphar, because we have the whole thing later. It's going to be Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife is going to accuse Joseph of sexual advances. However, who is Potiphar? So Potiphar, hold on one second, it says that he is the chamberlain of the butchers. That is who it is. Let me see again. On a second, we brought him down. 1 second. Sorry. Chapter 39, verse 1, page 213. And Joseph had been brought down to Egypt. Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh, the chamberlain of the butchers, a prominent Egyptian, purchased him from the Ishmaelites. So the rescuer of Joseph, and because then he ends up being in charge of his family, in charge of everything, his whole household, was the chamberlain of the butchers. So this is the only place that this appears in the entire Bible. It's like there's only two people who are in charge of butchers: the person who sends Jeremiah back and the person who buys Joseph and has him in his table. They are, instead of being the people who are in charge of killing people, they end up being the rescuers in both of those stories. So we have all of these like little facts lining up. Now we have to go to the Ishmael, the assassin's crocodile tears when the refugees come from Shechem and Shiloh. Oh, it's so awful. Let's go see Goodalia. He'll have an answer for us. It's like, who else had crocodile tears? Joseph's brothers. When they take the coat dipped in the blood back to their father, say, we found this. Joseph has been killed by a wild animal. They have to cry. How are they going to keep up their ruse that they're innocent? Also crocodile tears. If you pick all these stories, like, oh, this is the story. This is the story. It's Joseph and his brothers, except this time they really killed him. Before they just sold him. Now they really killed him. And where do they end up going? It says, how did the Jewish people get down to Egypt? They went down to Egypt because of Joseph. Okay, they end up, and that's where the exile begins. And that's where the Jews go after Goodalia and everything happens and the government turns on them. It's like enough of the Jews, and they go down to Egypt. Like, and that's the end. It says, this is the saddest story ever. And when does it happen? Are you telling me that this happens on Rosh Hashanah with all your our father, our king, we're all brothers? Spare me. Spare me. Like, so our fast day today is, we don't want to do that. We are doing that. Turning against brothers. So God willing, we're not killing anybody, but we come close. Humiliating people, screaming at them, yelling at them. Their political position is different. They're on the other side of some issue. It's people like you who are ruining our country. It's people like you who are blah, 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 you know, whatever it is. And we feel so justified. Do you think Ishmael didn't feel totally justified in killing Goodalia? People always feel justified in what they do. God is like, I can't hear you. Don't come to me with our father, our king, when you're doing that to your sibling. So that's his fast day for us. It's like, we're still in the same boat. We're still doing the same thing. So with the last 2 days, just like a fake. So it's interesting, because Goodalia was killed on Rosh Hashanah, we really should be fasting on Rosh Hashanah, but you can't fast on Rosh Hashanah because it's a Yantif. So that's why it's observed as soon as possible after Rosh Hashanah, which is today. Normally, and then it fits in, and then it's like, was it just a coincidence that it happened now? Because now it fits in with the 10 days of Teshuvah, because we know Yom Kippur only takes care of forgiveness for sins between us and God. It does nothing for the sins and the wrongdoings between us and our siblings. It doesn't do anything. That's what we have to fix. We have the 10 days. So in a way, the fast of Goodalia happened at, if you can say such a thing, at exactly the right time. It happened at the time when we need it most as a reminder of what situation and position we're really in. And until we can see each other as siblings and as partners and not see each other as threats and enemies, our Father doesn't want to hear from us. It's like, you know, work it out. I had a friend who was telling me that her her daughters had gone on a trip together, and they like started fighting or whatever, and one was calling her and saying, I can't stand it anymore, I'm not traveling with her anymore, blah blah blah. And she said, work it out. This is not a severable relationship. You don't get to undo being siblings. You don't. So it's like the Jewish people, we're in it together, so work it out. So, you know, this doesn't mean you have to be best friends. There's some people's like, you know what, this is just a lot of tension, let's just meet for coffee once in 10 years or something. I mean, like, I don't know, I may not be able to do it, but the hostility and has to go away. That's it. And everything's like, well, no, but my case is an exception, because in my case, this person really is horrible, and what they believe really is awful, and the things they say really are outrageous, and I just can't have anything to do with them, and I'm so done with them. It's like, work it out, figure out something. It has to work out. So we need to be in this together, because until we are together, the rest of us, God's not interested. It's like parents, like, you work it out, you go into timeout, and when you can be together, then I'll be happy to talk to you. And until then, I really don't have anything to say. So that's where we're at. So that's true. Joan, yes, why don't you unmute and so I can hear you.
Hi, good Yontif, everybody.
Good Yantif, Joan, nice to see you.
Yes, thank you. It's very nice to be here. It really hurts my heart when I hear Jews of different denominations putting down Jews of other denominations. You know, I don't know why that is, and I think a lot of it comes from the left, but more liberal side of Jews. I shouldn't generalize at all, because they're good people everywhere, right?
There are
But
good
it
people
does us
everywhere.
no good to put down the practice of somebody else. Like it does not do a liberal Jew any good to hear a more observant Jew say they're not Jews.
No, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know,
We don't have to say any of it. And
we don't have to say
we
any
don't
of it.
have to say any of it because nobody asked us to
Right.
rule on this. So are there people who, according to halacha, as Orthodox Jews observe it, there are people who consider themselves Jewish who are not halachically Jewish? Yes.
Right.
Is that my business?
No.
It's like,
Right.
if my child is marrying that person, so maybe that's their business. I don't have to
Right.
weigh in. I
Right.
don't need to say anything about it. And I can talk about things that are positive about what they're doing. So we don't have to even comment on it. Now, this does not mean that we have to approve or agree with what people are
Right.
doing.
But that's your own opinion.
And even if it's not my opinion, that may be a
Right.
halachic ruling that what this is not halachically accurate. But nobody's asked me to, unless somebody asks me, and I've had people ask me, is such and such an action, is that kosher or is that halachically whatever? And I'll say, you're asking me within a halachic framework, I can give you an answer, but I'm not weighing in on the person's value. And if somebody wants to identify themselves as whatever they want, I mean, seriously, in this day and age where you're a man, but you can say you're a woman, like who am I to say that, you
Right.
say you want to identify as Jewish? Mazel tov. That's fine. I mean, I may not, count you in my minion, but I'm not in charge of that. So
Right.
it's also the part that we think that we have to evaluate everybody's status on everything. And people feel threatened and people feel put down and people interpret things different ways. Listen, people draw conclusions without even having any information. I mean, I remember when I was in the dorm at the DU and there were Jewish people there and we sat down at the dining table, whatever. It wasn't like I was like so super religious, but Jewish people who were having like the bacon and cheeseburger or whatever, would apologize to me for eating it. I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't even paying attention, but they felt guilty. And so they felt that I was judging them. And so they felt they had to give me an explanation. Like I wouldn't care about the whole thing. So there are a lot of assumptions that people are walking around with about how other people are seeing them and what people are saying. It's like, you know what? Just say Lashana Tova. You know how many people I saw over Yontif? Just say Lashana Tova. How are you? Good Shabbos. It's so nice to see you. I appreciate you as a human being. Nobody said, and like, you know what? The way you do Sabbath doesn't really work for me. The way you do kosher doesn't really work for me. Unless somebody is inviting you over and they need to know how you do things because it has to be a certain way, then you have reason to say something. Otherwise, it's like, who asked everybody to be giving this running commentary, everybody? Let's see, I just wanted to see here a question. Hold on. Thank you, Joan, for that. Yes, it's true. So Lois is saying, give meaning to what God says to Cain, if you do well, shall thy countenance not be lifted up, and if thou doest not well, sin crouches at the door, and unto thee it is desired, but thou mayest rule over. Okay, so that is about the general idea of the Yatsahara. So let's talk about that for a moment. So the Yatsahara in human relationships is very strong because the truth is all of us are insecure. Basically, we all feel like somebody's not, we may feel insecure about how we're dressed at an event. We may feel insecure about, our bodies and our strength and being at that. We have a lot of insecurities, different people, different things. And when it comes to spiritual and religious identities, I think people feel very nervous. Everybody does, because we want approval. It's like we want approval from our siblings and we may not get the approval. So I don't have to approve. That's the good news. I don't have to approve of it. It is, I can just love you for who you are, as I don't really have to approve of something. So Beth Ann is saying, when someone is not Jewish, the chat went away. Hold on a second, Beth Ann, bring it back. When someone not Jewish says something hurtful to me, I blow it off more easily than when a Jew is mean. I'm getting much stronger, but it hurt. Absolutely, because it's like your family. It's like when your mother said something to you or your sibling, you remember it forever. And, Joe Blow in 5th grade, maybe not so much, because it's family. And so it hurts more. So we're supposed to be sensitive, and the sensitivity to other people and where people are at. Everybody's on a journey. Just remember, folks, we live in a Christian world. There are so many pressures on all of us to conform to different societal norms and values and way things go. It's hard. Everybody has it. It's not easy for anybody. And wherever people find themselves, people should just continue growing and learning. That's all I say. Someone asked me, like, where do the women belong who come to your classes? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't really relate to people about which school they belong to. It's like I see, 15, 17, 20 beautiful faces here, people who want to learn Torah. I don't really care. It's like I see people who want to learn, and that's the most important thing. We're going to talk about the sin crouches at the door, but Dale, if you want to unmute and say.
Yeah. First, I love all your classes, and I miss not being here. And I wish more people, more Jewish people, had the attitudes and the peacefulness that comes from learning with you. So I wanted to pick up on what Joan was saying. For me, and I thought I was over it, but obviously not. It's been 2 years. When I was attacked by the Haredi girls at the Wall in Jerusalem, when I was there with Women of the Wall, where when we study things like this and you hear Jew against Jew, and here I was as a Jewish woman, fairly observant, being told that I wasn't Jewish, and I won't even say the words that they were sharing, but pushing, shoving, spitting, hitting, throwing stones at you because you wore a talit at the Wall. And it hasn't stopped. And, there's so much, I don't know if the right term is sinat chinam, but, these are people who study Torah, and you're not supposed to have Jew against Jew. You're supposed to be more like what we're doing here. It doesn't matter whether you are unaffiliated, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox. That shouldn't matter. We're all Jewish, and we should respect each other. So I just wanted to bring that up because, yes, we're in a Christian society here, but when I'm in Israel and I want to go to the Wall to daven, I'm not accepted there as a woman. So
it's so hard, and we are at each other's throats. And we'd be better just all having a challah bake together, setting up at the hotel, like we can all agree on that, unless you even have gluten-free, and do that. And vegan, you can have without eggs. I mean, the things that bind us together, it's just easier. And unfortunately, because we have a Yatsahara, the Jewish people specifically have a Yatsahara of divisiveness. So would it be great if all of humanity was united? That'd be great, amazing. But I'm going to say that's secondary to the Jews. And it goes to a very, very, very deep reason. It says, we represent God. There is one fact about God. There's only one fact about God that we affirm with our life. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That God is a unity. It says God, Torah, and the Jewish people are one. And the most important thing that we are supposed to reflect is unity. And that is what will change the world. I was telling a friend of mine, it says, the world is in chaos because the Jews are in exile. The Jews are in exile because of our sinat chinam. It says, we can fix, it's not particularistic. We can fix the whole world by reversing the sinat chinam, which will actually draw like a magnet all the Jewish people to the land of Israel, which will then make the entire world at peace. It's like, oh my gosh, that's a huge responsibility. And that goes to this day also of Goodalia. It's like, you just literally put the final nail in the coffin when things were just like beginning to turn around. The fact that it said that the Jewish people were coming from all places reuniting, and then this comes in and just blows the whole thing apart. It's like, how dare you? How dare you? How dare we? How dare we be an instrument for divisiveness? This does not mean we need to belong to the same shul. It means you can have a breakaway shul. It means you can daven in different places. You can sing a Don Olam to different melodies. You cannot sing a Don Olam at all. Like, you can do all of these things. And all these things do need to be worked out. And I'm not an expert in all the political issues. But the fact that it would go down to a level of personal attack, that's where we have to start with that. Never mind the philosophical issues. We don't even need to go there. Let's just start on, the basics. It's like one of the things I always appreciate seeing the photographs, not on the women's side, on the men's side, but the pictures at the kotel where you see like a Hasidic man standing next to a soldier, standing next to a clearly secular person, and they're all at the kotel. Like, that's the picture. That's way more meaningful than seeing 3 Hasidic guys lined up. It's like, okay, I know they're there, or even 3 soldiers or 3 secular people. To see each of them all together, and that's what I like to see. So we may not be able to achieve it in all the issues, but at the personal level, I don't want to be a person who would spit at anybody. I don't want to be a person who would be throwing stones at anybody or yelling and screaming and shrieking. That's not going to get anybody anywhere. And I actually don't know anybody who's ever changed their perspective by having that approach. It's like, you know what, now that come to think of it, after you've spit at me and thrown something at me, I think I'm going to join your side because that was so compelling. It's like, first of all, it's completely ineffective and it's totally inappropriate. Doesn't work. The only thing that works is coming together. So we have to find the place of coming together, which is why, I said it kind of facetiously, like, let's just bake challah together. That was part of the whole motivation for the Shabbos project. It's like, we're not talking about where people are davening and what they do and how they observe anything. Let's talk about something basic that we can all agree on. Jews like challah. Okay, let's do that. And if we cannot get to the places where we can agree and share something special and fun and meaningful, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose it.
Ellyn,
So, yes, Helene.
I also think that we need to expand our horizons. There are other people besides Jews, and there's Christians and Muslims and all that. And I think we need to do that also. I think that's so important to walk down the street, smile, put a smile, whatever we need to do. But it's just not, I get sometimes upset about saying only we live in this community. It's only the Jews. We're such a small percentage of everyone. Yes, we can filter out, but we need to be out there. We need to bring our branches and our out there and our roots out there also. And we need to do that. It's like, this has been an incredible time that it's just the energy of everything and everybody is just so out there. We can spread that we need to spread love and peace and all of these wonderful things instead of just hatred and diversity. We're even diverse, getting away from people because we're saying we're Jewish. We are, but we're God put everybody there.
God put everybody here. So Helene, you are right. However, it's just like in the levels of charity. Tzedakah says, who is your first responsibility to in charity? In Maimonides and the Rambam, you have levels. And first is a needy family member. If you have a brother who is in need of tzedakah, you need to get to him first before the really nice guy who is not in your family. Jews have another problem, which is we want to be there for everybody else except ourselves. It will not help us if we can't get the family right. It says we're judged based on our family relationships. You save the world, amazing. You're not talking to your sister, that's a problem. It can't be like you did one thing instead of the other. It says you start building it first here because it will spread out. So I'm not saying be mean to the Christians and Muslims in your life because you're just focusing on the Jews. I'm saying if we don't get the family first right, the rest of it is irrelevant. It won't help because it's like it's the core. It's like in your body. It doesn't help if you have really strong fingers if your body can't stand up. It's like, okay, I really exercise my fingers. That's great. It's like, that's good, but where's your core? So we have to focus on the core, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but it has to be the first priority because the consequences of it are devastating and deadly, and it's affecting everybody else. Everything else will come into line when we get it right with ourselves. Not again exclusively, because it will ripple out. And the truth is the person who cultivates, it's kind of like, if you can make it with your family, you can make it with anybody.
Yeah.
People say you can't choose your family, you can choose your friends. That's because family is hard. And I like my Muslim, drug dealer, because he's so kind and so sweet and he's so interesting and he's so thoughtful and he's a good businessman, all that. It's so much easier to talk to him than my, whoever
Yeah.
in my family. So it's like, doesn't help. We have to get the family right first. Again, not to any exclusion. And everybody else, it will fall into place. Will fall into place. Yeah, we have a hard time. So let's talk about the Yatsahara. Because God is one, and the Jewish people are supposed to manifest oneness, achdus. We talked about that several times in the davening of a Rosh Hashanah. Aguda achat. We make an agud, a chain, a collection. We make a connection of oneness. This does not mean sameness. It means unification. That is as close to oneness as we can manifest. So because that would literally change the trajectory of the world, there is a tremendous opposing force that raises its head. And that's called the Yatsahara of divisiveness. The Yatsahara of divisiveness especially attacks the Jewish people about the Jewish people within our family. It's as if there's a force that is saying, I don't want you to achieve this. And so you have to work really hard to overcome this divisive spirit. That Yatsahara is going back to the comment about going back all the way to Cain and Abel. What was the problem there? Jealousy. Once again, that Abel's sacrifice was accepted and Cain's was not. And instead of Cain, God says to Cain, like, why is your face down? Why is your face down? And he said, if you improve yourself, you'll go fine. But if you don't, sin crouches at the door. So the word for crouches is very interesting. That word, let me just go back to Genesis and find it. Where is Barbie? Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, it's beforehand. Sorry.
Noah?
Does anybody find it?
Is it lichroa? I didn't find it in the Torah, but just in Hebrew, maybe it's modern. Is it lichroa?
It should not be that. It should be a different word that is Resh Bet Sadi.
It's Genesis 4:7.
Okay, thank you. Rest odd. So in the English and the Art Scroll, do you see what it says there? Surely if you improve yourself, you will be forgiven. But if you do not improve yourself, sin rests at the door. That's a very different word than crouch. When you think of the word crouch, what do you think of? What's your image? Like a lion that's like ready to pounce on you and beat you up? But that's not the word. The word is, and let me find it in the Hebrew. Hold on one second. Verse 7. The word is rovates. Resh Bet Sadi. It is in between the Zion and the Chet in the Hebrew, if you're looking on page 20. Rovates ve'elecha. Okay, rovates, that is like from the same word, the same word that is in the Psalm Mizmor LeDavid. He causes me to lie down by still waters. Marbitzeni, that's the same root, Resh Bet Sadi. It is a very soft word, lie down. So what does that mean? that it says that the sin rests at the door. It means it's there. And if something is resting at your door, how effective are you in being able to keep it out? What do you have to do? Do you have to like go on a major attack? It's like, no. It's really seen more like an animal that is resting at the door that you can rule over. So now I'm not a dog owner, and I know people are, and getting your dogs trained is considered like a very challenging thing. And that there are dog trainers that are out there, and they always say the problem is never the dog, it's the owner. That it's like if the owner does not like have the right, I don't know what you're supposed to have, calm, focused, whatever. I think it was Beth Ann who used this word last time we met, calm, focused energy, assertive energy. Says that's what it takes to manage the Yatsahara. It doesn't mean that you're fighting a lion. It is a beast, and it rests at the door, and it's going to be able to tell if you are the master of it or not. And so that is where it is, but it's there, and don't think it's not. And any time and any opportunity it has to come in. That's why it says it rests at the door, at the doorway. The question is, which side of the door is it on? Outside the door, or did you let it in? So that's the thing about the Yatsahara. Are you letting in this force in your life, or are you keeping the door out, keeping it out? Once you let it in, then you're right. That's going to be really hard. It's like, once it gets in there, we one time had squirrels are really cute outside. Well, one time we had a squirrel that came down our chimney, and then it was running around our house. And when I called animal control, well, did you corner it? I'm like, corner it? How do you corner a squirrel? It's a wild animal. No, I didn't corner it. Luckily, it was so scared, it had cornered itself underneath our stairs downstairs. But once it's in the house, I don't have any control over this. So it says, once you let the Yatsahara in, and when it says in the house, it's like into your mind and heart, then watch out. Once somebody, we see what happens. Once somebody, it's like they say that about ka'as, about anger. Once that anger and that temper goes in, people say, I lost it. I lost it. It's like, yes, you did. You lost your wisdom because you let that in. So you let that in, then you're right. You're going to have a problem. And so God was telling Cain, if you improve yourself, you will be forgiven. But if you do not improve yourself, kind of like you as the dog trainer, you as the Yatsahara trainer, if you do not improve yourself, sin rests at the door. And it says, its desire is toward you. It's looking for an opening. And yet you can conquer it. You can conquer it. And the word is, timshal. Timshal means to rule over it. It doesn't mean to destroy it. Timshal, like the word for the government is the memshala. The Rosh HaMemshala is the head of the government. Okay, that's like the prime minister is called the Rosh HaMemshala. That root means to rule over. It doesn't say kill it. It doesn't say destroy it. It says rule over it. We need to rule over this aspect of divisiveness and turn it around into being able to appreciate differences. So divisiveness comes from perceiving and reacting to differences instead of embracing them. What can I say? Again, I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to approve of it. I don't have to like it, but I can like you, and I can value what you do and who you are and how you see yourself. That's it. That's all I really need to do. Nobody signed me up for anything more than that. That is what's really hard for us to do. We don't do that. We end up in these horrible scenarios and situations. And I just have to tell you about I forgot the name of the project in Israel. It was a project, it was started by Haredi, a religious woman who wanted to bridge the gap between the Haredim and the secular soldiers, specifically. I think it was secular soldiers. And they started a pre-army learning program, matching up Haredi people to learn with secular folks, just on a personal basis. Like, come to your home, have a coffee, learn something. And it has been incredibly successful and has broken down the barriers, the perceived barriers between people to be able to recognize and appreciate what each person is doing. And they have these incredible testimonials. This person's giving their life for the army, they're giving their time, et cetera, et cetera. The person in the army is like, these people are learning Torah. This is the basis of the Jewish people. Without the Torah, we don't have a Jewish people to defend. And so this is important. And just being able to see all of that together. And it's all over this desire, like we need to find the places where we can connect. And then you find out, oh, you like tennis or you like whatever, rugby, I do too. It's like you do, and I like music, and I like this, I like gardening, I like whatever it might be. It's like, where are the places of commonality? So the Jewish people are designed to be different. We have 12 tribes. It goes so far that when we have the Midrash about the splitting of the sea, the Midrash says that there were 12 different channels. There were 12 different paths that each of the tribes went down. To preserve their differences, you could say, wouldn't it be easier if everyone could just be the same? We'll all just be one. We'll have one flag. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. We need everybody's differences. Some of the differences are things that we can accept, and some things are the ones we can't. I'll tell you, we have a thing, our dot minyan is now davening because we don't have a building. We are davening in what used to be Rabbi Twersky's shul at TRI. Beth Ann and I are davening partners there. And the building is owned by Rabbi Sirota for the Western Center for Russian Jewry. They have a different nusach. Their davening is a little different melodies, kind of different order of the services. It's called nusach Sfard, and we're nusach Ashkenaz. You can't have a service that's a mixture of both. Halachically, you have to do one or the other. You have to do one or the other. You're supposed to keep your nusach. They're supposed to keep theirs, and we're supposed to keep ours, which means that we can't really combine. Because I'm like, why don't you just combine? It's like, you can't. So I think I shared with you that when my son was in the hospital in Ashdod, that there was a base medrash, a place of learning, and they had services, they had davening, and on the davening board it said what each service, if it was going to be Nusach Sfard or Nusach Ashkenaz. So it's like, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning service, Nusach Sfard. So if you went there on that time, it was going to be Nusach Sfard, and there weren't going to be any fights. It was like, well, there's more Ashkenazim in here, so it should be this. It's like, no fighting. This is what it is. So you could say, well, why can't we just have one mega nusach for everybody? It's like, no, because the differences are important. We have 70 nations, we have 70 languages, we have the Jewish people, 12 tribes. We are unified around the center of God and Torah. But we embrace the differences, but it's not easy. It is not easy, and we really struggle. So if we could do one thing today on the fast of Goodalia, it would be to take an opportunity, maybe to reach out to somebody who you feel there's a divide with, and just say, hey, thinking of you, want to wish you a Shana Tova, hope you have a really great year. I'm going to tell you personally something that I did. Whatever. We had a search for a new rabbi for our shul. I was the co-chair of the search committee. The person who we ended up recommending to the board was someone who I could get behind as the chairman of as the co-chair of the search committee, but I could not personally endorse. This caused a tremendous amount of hard feelings, anger, and hostility toward me. It's been quite a lot of personal fallout over this. However, I'm like, I'm not getting into like the mudslinging. I'm just not doing it. So before Rosh Hashanah, my husband and I, so our shul, so there's a breakaway minyan, and they formed a new minyan, and they have hired this rabbi, because it's a whole long story, but you get the general idea. Split, hard feelings, etc. So this new minyan hired this rabbi, and I like him very, very much. Really, really like him. I just could not agree with some of the places where he was. So before Rosh Hashanah, my husband and I made a donation to this new breakaway minyan in honor of this new rabbi that they hired, and in honor of the leadership of this new minyan, some people who aren't speaking to me. So I'm like, I am not going to be on the side of the schmutz. I just can't do it. It just makes my stomach is just like in knots. So the rabbi wrote me an email, thank you so much, and how is your son, and wishing you a good year, all this stuff. Yesterday, walking to shul, so I was walking where Dot Minyan was having their davening, and I hear this voice saying, Ellyn. It was the rabbi who was in town for the services. He had been walking on Monaco. I was walking Dakota. He saw me. I didn't see him. Plus, he had on sunglasses. I don't even recognize my own relatives. If people are wearing sunglasses, they're in complete disguise to me. I do not recognize them. So it turns out he goes, it's Rabbi Gelman. I'm like, hello, how are you? Happy good Yontif. I said, I heard the services were beautiful yesterday for you. I just wish you so much success and so glad to see you, and hello to your wife. The whole thing is like, so good to see you. He went out of his way. I went out of my way. We are not going to be davening together. And I wish him the best ever. He's an amazing, wonderful person. That's how it has to be. That's how it has to be. So I'm not sure when the other people are getting the memo, but that's, and it's not easy. It's not easy. It ties my stomach in knots. But as someone said, the best thing about taking the high road is the view is much better. And it has to be personal. And I would argue with him on halacha, and I disagree with where he is on a number of issues, and I'm not going to be part of his shul. But I think he's a wonderful person. I'd love to have coffee with him, and I like to read his book and do all these other things. It's great. So there you go. That's the Jewish people. And everybody should find their own piece and their own slice of what works for them. And that'll be just A-okay. And then we can all meet and have Kiddush together and Beit Challah and say L'chaim and say Shana Tova. We have so much more in common than we have that is separating us. It is, and if we could just focus on that, of what's the core, that's how the tribes stayed together. There were such differences between them, such differences. The only thing that held them together was that Mishkan was in the center. If there's no Mishkan in the center, then it's just the centrifugal force blows everything out of the water. So we need to find that source. And that maybe is what we do for Rosh Hashanah. It's like, we all basically said the same things. Maybe you had a shorter service, maybe you had a longer service, but nobody was lighting Hanukkah candles yesterday. I can tell you that. We were all doing Rosh Hashanah. We're all doing the same thing. So when we have that at its core, then we have the chance to be able to connect at that level and live with the differences and just live with it. They're not going to all be resolved. They're just not. And we don't need to resolve them. We can just be together. So thank you. This is, yes. This is my last class with you for a while. We are leaving for Israel, God willing, a week from Sunday. And I'll be back either in a month or 6 weeks. Not sure if our women's trip is going. We're feeling hopeful, maybe. And I'm going to try to, during Chol HaMoed Sukkot, we will be in an apartment in Jerusalem that has Wi-Fi. People say they have Wi-Fi. It's not always the best connection, but I'll have my laptop with me. So I will send you an email. And I think it's the 21st of October, whatever that Thursday is. It's in the middle of Sukkot, and we will try to have a class from Jerusalem, and be very special for me to be able to connect with you. So until then, have a very meaningful day of Was Goodalia, and to take it from a level, hopefully, thank you, Beth Ann, way above. The reason we're fasting is because we ate too much on Rosh Hashanah. The reason we're fasting is that we have a serious work to do that we need to be very mindful of, and having it be at this time, thank God it was during this time. It's at least it puts it in the right context that our 10 days of Teshuvah should be focusing on this, and that then God is going to be like, when your kids get along, you can forgive almost anything. Okay, So they, don't exactly do their chores, and they don't exactly, go to bed on time, and they don't exactly do all these other things, but they get along together so beautifully. I forgive you. And that's God's attitude. It's like, if you can get along, I will forgive you. So work on that, and not worry about the other things, but let's focus on this now. That will be the most important thing. All right, Hashem should just find favor in all of our efforts, and our learning again should all be an aliyah for the neshama of Jan, of Yatsahara. I only knew her mother's name of Bat Yachididus. I didn't know her father's name, and also an aliyah for the neshama for Dale's husband Jerry, and it should be an aliyah for all of our neshamas in this world. That God should give us a year to work on all these issues and make 5782 the year that we can really see tremendous growth and transformation, and all good news. B'sorot tovot. Have a wonderful Shana Tova, an easy, meaningful fast for Yom Kippur and the beginning of Sukkot, and I will hope to see you from Jerusalem on the 21st.
Thank you, Ellen. This was very
Thank you so
meaningful.
much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Beautiful. Safe travels.
You soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Oh,
Thank
and
you.
Roberta, I saw your new granddaughter. She's so adorable.
Oh my gosh, is my little Renala the sweetest little, oh yeah,
She's
so
so cute.
Oh
She
my,
fell asleep on my shoulder. I was so honored.
she is
Oh.
just a little joy and blessing. I get to watch her. Usually I'll be watching her on Thursdays. So if she's quiet,
She
I-
can come to Parsha class also.
Yep,
It's for
I'm gonna
women,
give
so
it a
she can
try.
come.
Yep, that's gonna be my day with her. So we will try and be there.
Okay, great. That'll be
Thank
wonderful.
you.
All right, take
Go to
care.
sleep. Thank you. This was beautiful.
Bye.
My
Hopefully see you.
pleasure.
Enjoy and safe travels to Israel.
Thank you, thank you. And Hannah and Helene, also Hannah will be in touch on the trip.
Good.
I'll be in
That's
touch with
here.
Patrick today and find out what he knows yet about what's going on.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Oh,
Okay, have a good
Bye-bye.
Shabbos, everybody.
You
It's so
too.
funny having Rosh Hashanah. Last night felt like Saturday night. I'm like, I have to get it through my head that it is actually
Yeah.
No.
Thursday night.
Bye.
All right, ladies, thank you. Take care. Have a good Shabbos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, Ellen.
Hello, Joan.
So nice to see you.
You too, Shana
Um,
Tova. How are you?
I am well. Abbott and I moved to Carbondale.
I didn't know that. Wow.
I know you didn't know that. We love it here in the valley. I mean, we're 10 miles from Glenwood, where we have a son who's teaching 4th grade.
Oh, how nice.
I know. And we're about 25 miles from Aspen, so we can do stuff there that we want, but we're farther away from all the
Yes.
hoopla.
Wow.
So I want to tell you something, and then I want to ask you a question. So we were in yoga. Our community here where we live has a rec center, and we did yoga. And I liked the yoga teacher very much. And she said, oh, in a couple of days will be the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm just going to turn off the recording because this doesn't
Okay,
need to be
okay.
part of our class recording.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Stop this recording.